Hello, hello, and welcome to the Morgan Library. My name is Miss Lindsay, and welcome to another Teen Talk Tuesday. And today, I will be reading Chapter 1 of Avalon High by Meg Cabot. Here we go. Avalon High. She knows not what the curse may be, and so she weaveth steadily, and little other care has she, the Lady of Shalott. Chapter 1. You are so lucky. Trust my best friend Nancy to see things that way. Nancy is what you would call an optimist. Not that I'm a pessimist or anything, I'm just practical. At least according to Nancy. Apparently, I'm also lucky. Lucky? I echoed onto the phone. In what way am I lucky? Oh, you know. You get to start over in a whole new school, Nancy said. When no one knows you, you can be whoever you want to be. You can give yourself a total personality makeover, and there won't be anyone around to be it all. Who do you think you're kidding, Ellie Harrison? I remember when you ate paste in first grade. I never thought of it that way, I said, because I hadn't. Anyway, you were the one who ate the paste. You know what I mean, Nancy sighed. Well, good luck with school and everything. Yeah, I said, sensing even over the 1,000-mile distance between us. It was time to hang up. Bye. Bye, Nancy said, then added, You're so lucky. Really, up until Nancy said this, I hadn't thought there was anything lucky about my situation at all. Except maybe the fact that there's a pool in the backyard of our new house. We never had a pool of our own. Before, if Nancy and I wanted to go to the pool, we had to get on our bikes and ride 5 miles, mostly uphill, to Como Park. I have to say, when my parents broke the news about the Sabbatical, the fact that they were quick to add, and we're renting a house with a pool, was the only thing that kept down the vomit that started coming up in my throat. If you are a child of professionals, sabbatical is probably about the dirtiest word in your own professional vocabulary. Every 7 years, most professors get offered one. Basically, a year-long vacation, so they can recharge and try to write and publish a book. Professors love sabbaticals. Their kids hate them. Because would you really want to uproot and leave all your friends, make all new friends at a whole new school, and just beginning to think, okay, this isn't so bad, only to have to uproot yourself again a year later and go back where you came from? No, not if you're sane anyway. At least this sabbatical isn't as bad as the last one, which was in Germany. Not that there's anything wrong with Germany. I still exchange emails with Anne Katrin, the girl I sat at a desk with in the weird German school I went to there. But come on, I had to learn a whole other language. At least with this one, we're still in America. And okay, we're outside Washington, D.C., which isn't like the rest of America. But everyone here speaks English, so far. And there's a pool. Having your own pool is a lot of responsibility, it turns out. I mean, every morning you have to check the filters and make sure there aren't any all jammed up with leaves or dead moles. There's almost always a frog or two in ours. Usually, if I get out there early enough, they're still alive. So then, I have to conduct a frog rescue expedition. The only way you can rescue the frogs is to reach down into the water to pull the filter basket out. So I've ended up touching all sorts of really gross stuff that floats in there, like dead beetles or newts, and a few times drowned mice. Once, there was a snake. It was still alive. I pretty much draw the line at touching anything that's capable of sending paralyzing streams of poison into my veins. So I yelled to my parents that there was a snake in the filter basket. And my dad is the one who yelled back, So, what do you want me to do about it? Get it out, I said. No way, my dad said. I'm not touching any snake. My parents aren't like other parents. For one thing, Other people's parents actually leave the house to go to work. Some of them are gone for as many as 45 hours a week, I've heard. Not mine. Mine are home all the time. They never leave. They're always in their at-home offices, writing or reading. Practically the only time they come out of their offices is to watch Jeopardy! And then they yell out answers to each other. No one else's parents know all the answers to Jeopardy! Or yell them if they do. I know, I've been to Nancy's house and seen the evidence for myself. Her parents watch Entertainment Tonight after dinner, like normal people. I don't know any of the answers to Jeopardy! That's why I sort of hate that show. My dad grew up in the Bronx, where there aren't any snakes. He completely hates nature. He totally ignores our cat, Tig, which of course means that Tig is crazy about him. And if my dad sees a spider, he screams like a girl. Then my mom, who grew up on a ranch in Montana and has no patience for spiders or my dad screaming, will come in and kill it, even though I've told her a million times that spiders are extremely beneficial to the environment. Of course, I knew better than to tell my mom about the snake in the pool filter, because she'd probably have to come out, snap its head clean off right in front of me. In the end, I found a forked branch and pulled it out that way. I let it go in the woodsy area behind the house we're renting. Even though the snake didn't turn out to be the scary one, I finally got the guts to save it. I kind of hope it doesn't come back. There's other stuff you have to do if you have your own pool. Besides cleaning out the filter baskets, you have to vacuum the pool floor. This is kind of fun. And you have to test the water all the time for chlorine and pH. I like testing the water. I do it a few times a day. You put the water in these little test tubes, and then you add a couple drops of this stuff. And then if the water in the test tubes turns the wrong color, you have to drop some powder into the filter baskets. It's a lot like chemistry, only better. Because when you're done, instead of a stinky mess like the kind I always end up with last year in chem class, you get beautiful clear blue water. I spend most of my summer that we moved to Annapolis messing around with the pool. I say messing around with. My brother Jeff, he left for his first year of college the second year in August. Put it a different way. He said I was acting like a freak about it. Ellie, he said to me so many times I lost count, relax. You don't need to be doing this. We got a contract with the pool company. They come every week. Let them do it. But the pool guy doesn't really care about the pool. I mean, he's just doing it for the money. He doesn't see the beauty of it, I'm pretty sure. But I guess I can see where Jeff was coming from. I mean, the pool did sort of start taking up a lot of my time. When I wasn't cleaning it, I was floating on top of the water with one of those inflatable rafts I made my mom and dad buy us over at the Wawa. That's the name of the gas stations here in Maryland, Wawas. They don't have any Wawas back home in Minnesota, just like Mobiles and Exxons or whatever. Anyway, we filled them up at the Wawa too, the rafts, with the air hose meant for people to use on their tires. Even though you aren't supposed to use an air hose to fill a raft. It says so right on the raft. But when Jeff pointed this out to my dad, he just went, who cares? And filled them up anyway. And nothing bad happened. I tried to keep the same routine going for the whole summer. Every day I got up and put on my bikini. Then I grabbed a Nutri-Grain bar and headed down to the pool to check the filter baskets for frogs or whatever. Then, when the pool was clean, I got into one of the rafts with a book and started floating. By the time Jeff left for school, I was so good at floating that I could do it without even getting my hair wet or anything. I could go all morning without a break, right up until my mom and dad would come out of the deck and say, lunch. Then I'd go inside, and mom and dad and I would have peanut butter and jelly, if I was the one cooking that day, or ribs from Red Hot and Blue down the road if it was one of my parents' turn, on account of them both being too busy writing books to cook. Then I'd go back out into the pool until mom and dad came out and said, dinner! I didn't think this was a bad way to pass the last few weeks of summer, but my mom did. I don't know why she has to go and make it her business how I spend my time. I mean, she's the one who let Dad drag us out here in the first place on account of the book he's researching. She could have written her own book on my namesake, Elaine of Astolat, the Lady of Shalott, back home in St. Paul. Oh yeah, that's the other thing about having professors as parents. They name you after totally random authors, like Poor Jeff after Geoffrey Chaucer, or characters from literature such as the Lady of Shalott, aka Lady Elaine, who killed herself because Sir Lancelot liked Queen Guinevere. You know, the one Keira Knightley played in the King Arthur movie, better than he liked her. I don't care how beautiful the poem is about her. It's not exactly a cool to be named after someone who killed herself over a guy. I've mentioned this several times to my parents, but they still don't get it. The name thing's not the only thing they don't get either. Don't you want to go to the mall? My mom started asking me every day before I could escape to the pool. Don't you want to go to the movies? But now that Jeff had left for college, I had no one to go to the mall or the movie with, except my parents. And no way was I going with them. Been there, done that. Nothing like going to the movies with two people who have to dissect the film within an inch of its life. I mean, it's Vin Diesel, okay? What do they expect? School's going to start soon enough, I'd say to my mom. Why can't I just float until then? Because it's not normal, my mom would say, when I'd ask her this. Which I would reply, oh, and you would know what normal is? Because let's face it, she and my dad are both freaks. But she wouldn't get mad. She'd just shake her head and say, I know what normal behavior for a teenage girl is, and floating in the pool by yourself all day is not it. I thought this was unnecessarily harsh. There's nothing wrong with floating. It's actually pretty fun. You can lie there and read, or if your book gets boring or you finish it and you're too lazy to go inside and get a new one or whatever, you can watch the way the sunlight reflects off the water onto the backs of the leaves of the trees above you. And you can listen to the birds and cicadas and off in the distance, the rat-tat boom of gunnery practice down at the Naval Academy. We saw them sometimes, the middies, or midshipmen, as they prefer to be called, the student officers, in their spotless white uniforms, walking in pairs downtown. Whenever my parents and I went to buy a new book for me to read, and coffee for them at Hard Bean Coffee and booksellers, my dad would point and say, look, Ellie, sailors. Which isn't that weird, really. I guess he was trying to make girl talk, because I can't get any of that from my mom, the spider killer. I guess I was supposed to think the middies were cute or something, but I wasn't going to talk about cute guys with my dad. I mean, I appreciate the effort and all, but in a way, it was just as bad as my mom's. Why don't you let me take you to the mall thing? And it's not like my dad spent his days doing anything all that exciting. The book he's writing is even worse than my mom's on a boredom barometer, because his is about a sword. A sword! It isn't even a pretty sword with jewels or gold or anything. It's all old and has these rust spots and isn't worth a dime. I know, because the National Gallery over in D.C. let my dad bring it home so he could study it closer. That's why we moved here, so we can look at this sword closer. It's sitting in his office. Well, the office of the professor whose house we're renting while he's in England on his own sabbatical. Probably studying something even more worthless than Dad's sword. Museums let you borrow stuff and bring it home if it's of academic interest. In other words, not worth anything. And if you're a professor. I don't know why my parents had to choose medieval times as their field of study. It's the most boring era of all, except possibly prehistoric times. I know I'm in the minority in thinking this, but that's because most people have this really messed up idea about what things are like in the Middle Ages. Most people think it was like what they show in the movies and on TV. Women floating around in pointy hats and pretty dresses saying thee and thou, and knights thundering up to save the day. But when your parents are medievalists, you learn at a pretty early age that things weren't like that at all. The truth is, Everyone back in the Middle Ages had totally bad BO and no teeth and died of old age at like 20. And the women were all oppressed and had to marry people they didn't even like, and everyone blamed them for every little thing that went wrong. I mean, look at Guinevere. Everyone thinks it's all her fault Camelot doesn't exist anymore. I'm so sure. Except that I discovered at an early age that sharing information like this can get you kind of unpopular at Sleeping Beauty birthday parties, or at that medieval times restaurant, or during games of Dungeons and Dragons. But what am I supposed to do? Remain silent on the subject? I generally can't help it. Like, I'm really going to sit there and go, oh yeah, things were all really great back then. I wish I could find a time portal and go back to like the year 900 and visit and get lice and have all my hair frizz out because there's no conditioner. And oh, by the way, if you got strep throat or bronchitis, you died because there weren't any antibiotics. No, not. As a consequence, I'm not at the top of anybody's list when it comes to to send out invites to the Renaissance Fair. But whatever. I end up giving in to my mom in the end. Not about the mall, about running with my dad. I didn't want to go or anything. But this was different than going to the movies or the mall. I mean, exercise is supposedly very good for middle-aged men, and my dad hadn't gotten any in a long time. I'd won the district's women's 200-meter back home just last May, but Dad hadn't exercised since his annual physical, which was last year, when the doctor told him he needed to lose 10 pounds. So he'd gone to the gym with my mom's twice, then gave up because he said all the testosterone at the gym made him crazy. My mom was the one who was all, if you take him running, Ellie, I'll get off your back about the floating thing, which pretty much clinched it for me. Well, that and the fact that it would give my dad a chance to get his heart rate up. Something I knew from what they always say on the Today Show that old people badly need. Like a good academic, Mom has done her research. She sent us to a park about 2 miles from the house we were renting. It was a very fancy park that had everything. Tennis courts, baseball diamond, lacrosse field, nice clean public restrooms, 2 dog runs, one for big dogs, one for little dogs, and, of course, a running path. No pool, like back home in Como Park. But I guess people in our new upscale neighborhood don't need a community pool. Everyone has their own in the backyard. I got out of the car and did a few stretches while I surreptitiously watched my dad prepare for his run. He put away his wire rims. He's blind as a bat without them. In fact, in medieval times, he'd probably have been dead by the age of 3 or 4 from falling down a well or whatever. I inherited my mom's 20/20 vision, so most likely I'd have lived a bit longer. And put on these thick plastic-rimmed glasses that have an elastic band he can snap behind his head to keep them from sliding off while he runs. Mom calls this his dork strap. This is a nice running path, my dad was saying, as he adjusted his dork strap. Unlike me, who would spend hours in the pool, Dad wasn't a bit tan. His legs were the color of notebook paper, only with hair. It's exactly 1 mile per lap. It goes through some woods, a kind of arboretum over there. See? So it's not at all in the hot sun. There's some shade. I slid my headphones on. I can't run without music, except during meets, where they won't let you. I find that rap is ideal for running. The angrier the rapper, the better. Eminem is ideal to listen to while running, because he's so mad at everyone, except his daughter. 2 laps? I asked my dad. Sure, he said. And so I turn on my iPod mini. I keep it on my arm strap when I run, which is different than the dork strap, and start running. It was hard at first. It's more humid in Maryland than it is back home. I guess on account of the sea. The air is actually heavy. It's like running through soup. But after a while, my joints seemed to loosen up. I started remembering how much I liked to run back home. It's hard and everything. Don't get me wrong, but I like how strong and powerful my legs feel underneath me while I run. Like I can do anything. Anything at all. There was hardly anyone else on the track, just old ladies, mostly power walking with their dogs, but I tore past them, leaving them in my wake. I didn't smile as I ran by. Back home, everyone smiles at strangers. Here, the only time people smile is if you smile first. It didn't take my parents very long to catch on to this. Now they make me smile and even wave at everyone we pass, especially our new neighbors when they're out in their yards mowing their lawns or whatever. Imagine, my mom calls it, it's important to keep up a good image, she says, so people won't think we're snobs. Except that I'm not really sure I care what people around here think of me. The running path started out like a normal track, with closely cut grass on either side of it, snaking between the baseball diamond and the lacrosse field. Then, curving past the dog runs and around the parking lot. Then, it left the grass behind and disappeared into a surprisingly thick forest. Yeah, a real forest, right in the middle of nowhere, with a discreet little brown sign that said, "Welcome to the Anne Arundel County Arboretum, by the side of the path. I was a little shocked as I ran past the sign at how wild the undergrowth of either side of the trail had been allowed to get. Plunging into the deep shade of the arboretum, I noticed that the leaves overhead were so thick, hardly any sunlight at all was allowed to get through. Still, the vegetation on either side of me was lush and prickly looking. I was sure there was a lot of poison ivy in there. Something that, if you contacted bad enough back in medieval times, could possibly have killed you, since there wasn't any cortisone. You could barely see 2 feet beyond the path. The brambles and trees were so close together. But it was at least 10 degrees cooler at the arboretum than it was in the rest of the park. The shade cooled the sweat that was dripping down my face and chest. It was hard to believe, running through that thick wood, that I was still near civilization. But when I pulled out my headphones to listen, I could hear cars going by on the highway beyond the thick growth of trees. Which was kind of a relief, that I hadn't accidentally gotten lost in Jurassic Park or wherever. I plopped my earphones back in place and kept going. I was breathing really hard now, but I still felt good. I couldn't hear my feet striking the path. I could only hear the music in my ears. But it seemed to me, for a minute, that I was the only person in these woods. Maybe the only person in the whole world. Which was ridiculous, since I knew my dad wasn't that far behind me. Probably not going much faster than the power-walking ladies, but behind me nonetheless. Still, I had seen too many TV movies where the heroine was jogging innocently along and some rando psychopath comes popping out of thick growth, just like the stuff on either side of me, and attacks her. I wasn't taking any chances. Who knew what kind of freaks were lurking? I mean, it was Annapolis, home of the U.S. Naval Academy and the capital of Maryland and all. Hardly an area known for harboring violent criminals. But you never knew. Good thing my legs were so strong. If someone did jump out at me from the trees, I was pretty confident I could deliver a good kick to the head, and kept stomping on him until help came. It was right as I was thinking this that I saw him. And that was Chapter 1 of Avalon High, available for checkout here at the Bargain Library. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I will see you at the next Teen Talk Tuesday. Bye-bye.